The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, and I read it with the same numb acceptance I'd learned as a kid hiding in my bedroom closet. Foreclosure, 30 days. $50,000. My name is Sarah Chen, and at 23, I'd already survived more than most people twice my age. The bruises had faded years ago, but the lessons stuck. Trust no one, depend on yourself, and never let anyone see you cry. Dad had been gone for 6 months. Not that his absence made much difference. Even when he was home, he was either drunk, angry, or both. The note he left was typical: "Sarah, I'm done. House is yours. Don't come looking for me." As if I would. But it was Mom's departure 3 years earlier that had really taught me about betrayal. She didn't just leave. She destroyed everything first. Smashed dishes, cut up photos, even poured bleach on my childhood stuffed animals. "If I can't be happy here, nobody can..." She'd screamed that last night, her fingernails leaving scratches on my arms that took weeks to heal. The neighbors had called the police twice during my childhood. Both times, Mom had charmed the officers with her sweet smile and explanations about accidents and clumsy children. Both times, I'd paid for it later with welts from Dad's belt and Mom's favorite punishment, locking me in the basement for hours. "You're worthless," she used to tell me during those rages. "Just like your father. Just like everyone in this pathetic family." So when I found that foreclosure notice, my first thought wasn't panic. It was relief. Finally, I could be free of this house and all its poisonous memories. I was wrong about being free. The first week after getting the notice, I did what I'd always done: I fought. Not with tears or phone calls to relatives who'd cut us off years ago, but with the kind of grim determination you learn when your parents use your college fund for liquor and lottery tickets. I worked 3 jobs. Days at the community center for $12 an hour, evenings cleaning offices for $10 an hour, and weekends catering events for $15 an hour, plus tips. I'd been doing this since I was 16, saving every penny I could hide from my parents' reaching hands. My childhood had been a masterclass in hiding money. I'd learned to stuff bills inside tampon boxes, tape them under drawers, even hide them in old textbooks. Dad never touched books, and Mom was too lazy to clean thoroughly. By the time I turned 18, I had almost $3,000 hidden throughout the house. It wasn't enough then, and it sure as hell wasn't enough now. The math was brutal. I was making about $2,800 a month gross, maybe $2,100 take home. After utilities, food, and basic necessities, I had maybe $400 left over. At that rate, I'd need 10 years to pay off the debt, assuming nothing went wrong. Everything always went wrong in our family. Desperation makes you do stupid things. I started going through Dad's belongings, not looking for sentimental keepsakes, but for anything of value. Maybe there was something to sell, some asset I didn't know about. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Medical bills from treatments he'd never mentioned. Credit card statements showing cash advances for gambling. And receipts, hundreds of them, for alcohol, cigarettes, and what looked like payments to loan sharks. My father hadn't just been a drunk. He'd been a gambling addict who'd borrowed money from dangerous people. The $50,000 debt was just what the bank knew about. In his closet, shoved behind moldy clothes, I found a shoebox full of photographs. Pictures of me as a child, but not the kind of pictures a loving parent keeps. These were documentation photos of bruises, cuts, and marks that told the story of my childhood in horrifying detail. At first, I thought Dad had kept them as some sick trophy. Then I found the letter underneath them. Written in his shaky handwriting: "Sarah, if something happens to me, take these to the police. Your mother did this to you. I was too weak to stop her. I'm sorry I was too weak to stop any of it. The key is for her art room. She said the paintings would be worth something someday. Maybe they can help you. Dad." A key. The same brass key I'd found in his desk, the one I'd never been able to identify. Mom's art room had been off limits my entire childhood. She'd installed a deadbolt when I was 8 after I'd accidentally knocked over one of her easels. The beating I got that day was the worst one yet. She'd used a wooden spoon until it broke, then switched to a metal spatula. "This is the only good thing about me," she'd screamed, gesturing at her paintings. "And you almost destroyed it. You destroy everything." The key fit perfectly. The room was exactly as she'd left it 3 years ago, but now I could see it with adult eyes. The paintings weren't just art. They were obsessions. Dozens of canvases covered with angry slashes of red and black twisted faces and what looked like scenes of violence. But there were other paintings too. Landscapes that were actually beautiful portraits that showed real skill, and in the corner, a series of paintings that made my blood run cold. They were all of me. but not the loving mother's portraits of her daughter. These were studies in pain. Me crying, me cowering, me with bruises carefully detailed in purple and yellow paint. She'd been painting my suffering, turning my childhood trauma into her art. I found sales receipts tucked between the canvases. Mom had been selling these paintings, the ones documenting my abuse, to collectors who thought they were powerful studies of childhood emotion. She'd made over $15,000 selling paintings of my pain. Among the receipts was a business card that made my hands shake. Rebecca Martinez, art dealer, Southwest Contemporary Gallery, Santa Fe, NM. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, very interested in the Damaged Child series, top dollar for originals. I called the number with trembling fingers. Southwest Contemporary Gallery, Rebecca speaking? This is Sarah Chen. I'm calling about my mother, Lily Chen, and her Damaged Child series. Oh my God, Sarah, I've been wondering when you'd surface. Your mother talks about you all the time. She's been working on a sequel series, Abandoned Daughter, and it's even more powerful than the original work. I almost vomited. A sequel series? 24 new pieces exploring themes of abandonment and resilience. She's been documenting her own journey of leaving an abusive household and the emotional impact on the child left behind. It's raw, honest work, very marketable. How much has she made from these paintings? Oh, the Damaged Child series has brought in about $80,000 over the past 2 years. The new series is priced higher. We're asking $5,000 to $8,000 per piece. There's a waiting list of collectors. My mother had made $80,000 painting my trauma while I worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over my head. She'd abandoned me and then profited from the abandonment. I need her contact information, I said, my voice deadly calm. Of course, honey, she's been hoping you'd reach out. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. Sarah, baby, I was just thinking about you. How are you, sweetheart? The fake warmth in her voice made me want to scream. I'm about to lose the house, Mom. Dad left me with $50,000 in debt. Oh no, that's terrible. But honey, you know I can't help with money. I'm barely making ends meet as an artist. Barely making ends meet, Rebecca Martinez says you've made over $100,000 from your paintings. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if she'd hung up. Sarah, she finally said, her voice colder now. I don't know what Rebecca told you, but she told me you've been selling paintings of my childhood abuse for 3 years. She told me you have a whole series about abandoning me. Those paintings are my art, Sarah. They're my way of processing what happened to us. What happened to us? You did it to me, Mom. You beat me. You locked me in the basement. You made my childhood hell, and now you're getting rich painting pictures of it. I never beat you. Your father. I found the photos, Mom. Dad documented everything. Every bruise, every cut, every mark you left on me. Another long silence. When she spoke again, the mask was completely off. You always were a dramatic little bitch, she said. Fine. I made some money from my art. So what, I deserved something good in my life after being stuck with you and your pathetic father for 20 years. I'm going to lose the house. Not my problem. You're an adult now. Figure it out. She hung up. I spent the next week in a rage that felt familiar and dangerous. It was the same cold anger I'd felt as a child when I'd learned to hide my feelings, to plan my survival, to wait for the right moment. I researched everything I could about Mom's art career. I found her social media accounts, her gallery representations, her upcoming shows. I studied the art market, learned about copyright law, and discovered something interesting. Several of those paintings of me were painted when I was a minor. I also discovered that Dad had been telling the truth about one thing. He'd been sending child support payments to Mom for years after she left. She'd been collecting money supposedly for my care while simultaneously abandoning me. My plan was simple. I was going to destroy her. First, I contacted a lawyer who specialized in exploitation cases. The photographs Dad had kept were evidence of child abuse, and the fact that Mom had profited from depicting that abuse opened up several legal avenues. Second, I reached out to Rebecca Martinez again, this time with a different story. I'm concerned about my mother's mental health, I told her. Some of the paintings in her Damaged Child series are, well, they're based on false memories. She's been struggling with psychological issues since she left home. False memories. The abuse she's depicting in those paintings, it never happened. At least not the way she's showing it. I'm worried she's created a fictional narrative to fuel her art, and it's gotten out of control. I could hear the concern in Rebecca's voice. That's very serious. If the paintings aren't based on real experiences, I think she needs help, I said. And I think those paintings need to be pulled from the market until she gets it. It took exactly 6 days for Mom to call me back. By then, Rebecca had suspended sales of the Damaged Child series, and word was spreading through the art community that there were questions about the authenticity of the work. "You little cunt," she snarled into the phone. "What did you tell them?" "The truth," I said calmly. "That you're a liar and a fraud. I'll sue you for defamation. With what money I hear your gallery dropped you." "This isn't over, Sarah. I'm coming home." "This isn't your home anymore, Mom. It stopped being your home the day you left." But she was right. It wasn't over. Mom showed up at my door 3 days later, and she looked like hell. Her artist's wardrobe was wrinkled and stained, her hair was unwashed, and she had the wild look of someone who'd been driving for hours without sleep. "Let me in," she demanded. "No. This is my house too. I'm still on the deed." "Actually, you're not. Dad quit-claimed it to me before he left." She tried to push past me, but I'd learned to defend myself years ago. I slammed the door in her face and locked it. She stood on the porch screaming for 20 minutes before the neighbors called the police. When the officers arrived, she turned on the charm I remembered from childhood. "Officers, I'm so sorry for the disturbance. I'm just trying to reconcile with my daughter. We've had a misunderstanding." But I was ready this time. I had Dad's photos, I had documentation of her art sales, and I had a restraining order application already prepared. "This woman abandoned me 3 years ago," I told the officers. "She's only back because I ruined her art career. She's never been a mother to me." The lead officer looked between us. "Ma'am, do you have somewhere else to stay tonight?" "I want to stay with my daughter." "Your daughter says no. You need to find somewhere else." After they left, Mom stood in the yard for another hour screaming threats. "You think you've won? You think you're better than me? You're nothing. You'll always be nothing." I watched her from the window and felt nothing. The scared little girl who'd once hidden in closets was gone. The woman who'd replaced her was harder, colder, and completely done with Lily Chen's bullshit. Over the next 2 weeks, Mom launched a campaign of harassment that would have impressed a military strategist. She called my work, telling my supervisors I was unstable and had drug problems. She contacted my landlord, though I owned the house, now claiming I was running an illegal business. She even called Child Protective Services, claiming I was abusing children at the community center. Every accusation was investigated and dismissed, but the stress was overwhelming. I was barely sleeping, constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every sound. Then she escalated. I came home from work to find my living room window broken and a brick on the floor. Attached to the brick was a note, "You owe me, I made you. Everything you are is because of me." I called the police, but she was long gone. They increased patrols in the neighborhood, but Mom was smart. She'd learned to avoid detection during her years of hiding her abuse. The second incident was worse. I woke up to find my car tires slashed and "ungrateful bitch" keyed into the paint. The third incident was terrifying. I found her in my kitchen at 2 a.m. having picked the lock. "Hello, baby," she said, sitting at the table like she belonged there. "We need to talk." "Get out," I said, my hand on my phone. "Now, is that any way to greet your mother? After all I've done for you. All you've done for me, you beat me, you abandoned me, and then you made money painting pictures of it. I gave you life, Sarah. I gave you a story worth telling. Do you think anyone would care about art depicting a happy childhood? Pain is what makes art valuable?" She stood up and I saw the knife in her hand. A kitchen knife from my own drawer. "You destroyed my career." She continued, moving closer. "You cost me everything, but I've been thinking there's one more painting I need to complete. The finale to the series." Mom put the knife down. "It's going to be called The Ungrateful Daughter. I think it'll be my masterpiece." I backed toward the door, but she moved faster than I expected. The knife caught me across the arm, opening a gash that immediately started bleeding. "There we go," she said, sounding pleased. "Now you're perfect for the painting." That's when 23 years of rage finally erupted. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I didn't cower like the scared little girl she remembered. I fought back. The first punch caught her in the stomach, doubling her over. The second one broke her nose. When she dropped the knife, I kicked it away and grabbed her by the hair, the same hair she'd grabbed when she used to drag me to the basement. "You want to paint pain?" I screamed, slamming her head against the kitchen counter. "Let me give you some inspiration." She fought back, clawing at my face, trying to bite me. But I was younger, stronger, and fueled by decades of suppressed rage. I beat her the way she'd beaten me, methodically, deliberately making sure every blow counted. When she finally stopped struggling, I stepped back, breathing hard. She was conscious, but broken blood streaming from her nose and mouth. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice deadly calm. "You're going to leave, you're going to disappear, and you're never going to contact me again." "I'm your mother," she whimpered. "No," I said. "You're nothing. You're less than nothing. You're a failed artist who destroyed her own family and then tried to profit from it." I dragged her to the door and threw her out onto the porch. "If I ever see you again, I'll kill you, and this time, I'll make sure there are no witnesses." She staggered to her feet, blood dripping onto her artist's clothes. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." I called the police and reported the break-in and assault. The cut on my arm required 12 stitches, and I had scratches on my face from her nails. When the officers arrived, they found the knife, the broken window, and enough evidence to charge her with breaking and entering assault with a deadly weapon and stalking. But Mom had vanished. I spent the next month looking over my shoulder, waiting for her to return. I installed security cameras, changed the locks, and started carrying pepper spray. I also started seeing a therapist for the first time in my life. Dr. Martinez, no relation to the gallery owner, helped me understand that my mother's return wasn't really about money or art. It was about control. She couldn't tolerate the idea that I had survived and thrived without her. "Abusers often escalate when they lose control," she explained. "Your mother's entire identity was built around being the artist who suffered. When you challenged that narrative, you threatened everything she'd built." "So what do I do now?" "You live your life, you heal, you remember that her choices are not your fault and her problems are not your responsibility." 2 months after the kitchen fight, I received a call from a police detective in Arizona. They'd found Mom's body in a motel room outside Phoenix, apparent suicide, pills and alcohol. She'd left a note, "Sarah destroyed everything. I can't live with nothing." I felt nothing. No grief, no relief, no closure, just emptiness. But there was more. The detective said she'd been living under a false name and had been arrested twice for shoplifting and once for assault. The glamorous artist life in Santa Fe had been a lie. She'd been barely surviving, moving from place to place, creating art that no one wanted to buy. The successful career I'd destroyed had been mostly fantasy. Mom's estate consisted of about $1 and $200 in cash, a storage unit full of paintings, and a 2007 Honda Civic with a busted transmission. Not exactly the windfall I'd expected, but the paintings were interesting. Not the ones depicting my abuse. Those had been destroyed when the gallery dropped her. These were different. Landscapes, portraits, abstract pieces that showed real talent. Work that might have been valuable if she'd been stable enough to build a legitimate career. I hired an appraiser more out of curiosity than hope. His assessment: the work shows considerable skill, but the market for unknown artists is limited. In a gallery setting, these might sell for $200 to $500 each. There are maybe 40 saleable pieces here. $20,000 maybe. Enough to make a dent in the debt, but not enough to solve the problem. With 18 days left before foreclosure, I had to face facts. I wasn't going to save the house. The debt was too big, my income too small, and my mother's inheritance too little. But I'd learned something important during those months of fighting. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. I'd survived an abusive childhood, an abandoning mother, and a father who'd gambled away our future. I'd fought back against someone who'd tried to destroy me, and I'd won. I didn't need to save the house. I needed to save myself. I contacted a bankruptcy attorney and started the process of letting the house go. It was painful, but it was also liberating. I was finally free of the place where I'd been hurt, the walls that held too many bad memories. I sold what I could of Mom's paintings, not to collectors, but to decorators and small galleries looking for affordable original art. I made $8,000, enough to cover my moving expenses and first month's rent on a small apartment across town. 6 months after the foreclosure, I was living in a one-bedroom apartment and working 2 jobs instead of 3. I'd left the community center, too many memories, and was working at a veterinary clinic and doing freelance bookkeeping. The apartment was small, but it was mine. No history, no ghosts, no painful memories. Just a place where I could start over. I kept 3 of Mom's paintings, not because I loved them, but because they reminded me of something important. Talent without character is worthless. She'd been gifted, but she'd also been cruel, selfish, and destructive. Her art couldn't save her from the consequences of her choices. I also kept Dad's photographs, not to torment myself, but as evidence of how far I'd come. The scared little girl in those pictures was gone. The woman who'd replaced her was scarred but unbroken. A year after Mom's death, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a painting I'd never seen before, a landscape of a desert sunset, beautiful and peaceful. There was a note from Rebecca Martinez. "Sarah, I found this in your mother's storage unit. It's the only painting she ever did that wasn't about pain or anger. I thought you should have it. I'm sorry for everything that happened. Rebecca." I hung the painting in my living room, not because I missed my mother, but because it reminded me that even the most damaged people are capable of creating something beautiful. The tragedy is when they choose to create pain instead. People always say that blood is thicker than water, that family is everything that you should forgive and forget. Those people never had parents who used them as punching bags and then profited from the bruises. I learned that family isn't about biology. It's about choice, respect, and love. My biological family had failed me in every possible way. But I'd found family in other places, Dr. Martinez, who helped me heal, Jake, the veterinarian, who became my friend and eventually my boyfriend, Mrs. Peterson, my elderly neighbor who checked on me and brought me soup when I was sick. These people chose to care about me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That's what real family looks like. Today I'm 25 years old. I live in a small apartment with Jake and our rescue dog, Bella. I work at the veterinary clinic full-time and I'm taking night classes in accounting. I'm building a life that's entirely my own. Sometimes people ask me if I miss my parents. The answer is no. I miss the parents I should have had, the childhood I deserved, the safety and love that every child needs. But I don't miss the people who hurt me and then abandoned me. I sleep well at night. I don't jump at sudden noises. I don't hide money or food or plan escape routes. I've learned to trust good people and to recognize bad ones from a distance. The house was sold at auction 18 months ago. I drove by it once and felt nothing. It's just a building now with new owners who've painted it bright yellow and planted flowers in the front yard. I hope they're happy there. I hope they fill it with better memories than the ones I left behind. People sometimes ask me what I learned from all of this. The answer is simple. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. You can't love people who are incapable of loving you back, and you can't build a future on the foundation of someone else's dysfunction. But you can save yourself. You can choose to be better than the people who hurt you. You can break the cycle of pain and create something beautiful from the ashes of what was destroyed. I kept one thing from my childhood home, a small mirror that used to hang in my bedroom. Not because it holds sentimental value, but because it reminds me every morning that I survived. The face looking back at me is strong, proud, and free. That's the only inheritance that matters. If you're reading this story and it sounds familiar, if you recognize the patterns of abuse and abandonment, if you're waiting for someone to save you or come back for you, let me tell you something important. They're not coming. The people who hurt you and left you didn't suddenly become better people. They didn't find enlightenment or grow a conscience. They're still the same people who are capable of hurting a child, abandoning their responsibilities, and profiting from pain. Your job isn't to fix them, forgive them, or give them another chance. Your job is to save yourself, to build a life so beautiful and strong that their absence becomes a blessing instead of a curse. Trust me, I did it. You can too. But you have to choose yourself first. Story 2, my name is Aaron Wallace. I'm 35, and for most of my life I've mastered the art of keeping peace with my family, even when it came at my own expense. But nothing could have prepared me for the day my son Noah, just 7 years old, was humiliated so publicly that something inside me snapped. It had been 3 years since Noah last saw my family. He's an unusually bright, sensitive child, the kind who loves to explain why bees dance or how Saturn's rings are made of ice and dust. But loud noises unsettle him. He hates crowded places and strangers touching him. A party at my mother's sprawling estate was the last place I wanted to bring him. But then came the call. Aaron. You're not seriously skipping the family anniversary party, my older sister Melissa chirped through the phone, feigning shock. Everyone's asking about Noah. I told them he'd be there. He's so interesting. Interesting. Not sweet or smart or wonderful. Just interesting, like he was an exhibit she promised to deliver. I almost refused, but Noah overheard. His eyes lit up as he clutched my hand. "We're going to Grandma's party with cake and balloons." His excitement was palpable, innocent. I couldn't deny him, so I said yes. The estate looked exactly as I remembered, too perfect. Pristine hedges, marble walkways, grand chandeliers sparkling from the front hall. Melissa was there to greet us at the entrance, her champagne glass already half empty. "There she is," she announced to no one in particular, air-kissing me without meeting my eyes. Then she turned her gaze on Noah. "And here's our little mystery guest." Before I could guide him inside, Melissa crouched and to my horror tapped him on the head. "You're mommy's little shadow, huh? Always clinging." I felt Noah's hand tighten around mine, unsure what to say. Inside, the noise was deafening. Laughter, clinking glasses, a jazz quartet competing for attention. I spotted the long dinner table, white linens, crystal goblets, and precisely set name cards. All except one. 12 chairs, 11 name cards. Noah's name was missing. "Melissa," I asked carefully, "where's Noah's seat?" She smiled coolly. "Oh, probably a printing mistake, but he can sit near the dessert bar, right? Kids like being close to sweets." The dessert bar was a side table shoved awkwardly in a corner. No chair, no place setting, nothing. I crouched to Noah's level. "You're sitting next to me," I whispered. He nodded, though I could already see him withdrawing into himself, as he always did when he felt unwelcome. I grabbed a chair from a nearby side table, wedged it in next to mine, and ignored the glances around us. Dinner was tense but mostly civil until Melissa clinked her wine glass with a spoon. Before dessert, everyone, she called out dramatically, "I have a special surprise for tonight." 2 servers emerged from the kitchen carrying a massive cake. But this was no ordinary cake. It was shaped like a dog bone. Beside it sat a silver dog bowl. Engraved on the front, Noah. Gasps and uncomfortable chuckles rippled around the table. Melissa beamed like a performer on stage. "Well," she said, "since Noah is our little pup tonight, always underfoot, he should have a proper treat." Noah looked up at me, eyes wide, unsure if this was a game or a punishment. "Did I do something wrong, Mommy?" he whispered. My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. Around us, my family laughed, some awkwardly, some wholeheartedly, but no one stopped Melissa. "Melissa," I began, rising from my chair. "That's enough." But she only raised a manicured hand. "Relax, Aaron. It's a joke. He probably eats off the floor at home anyway." That was it. The dam inside me broke. But I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I simply walked to the corner of the room where the family videographer was standing, recording every smug smile and snide comment. He handed me his wireless microphone without a word. I took a breath and tapped it gently. The sound echoed through the hall. "Attention, everyone," I said, calmly holding the microphone close. "You're all laughing at a 7-year-old who was invited here under the pretense of family, only to be mocked and degraded." Melissa's face froze. "Aaron, sit down. You're embarrassing yourself." But I wasn't finished. "This party isn't about family," I continued, my voice steady though my heart was racing. "It's about appearances. About putting on a show." I turned to Noah, who was now staring at me with a mix of fear and hope. I knelt beside him. "Come on, baby," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let's leave this circus. You don't belong here, and neither do I." As I rose, I felt something shift in the room. My father averted his gaze, suddenly finding interest in his wine glass. My mother pretended to adjust a napkin. A few cousins exchanged uneasy glances. And then silence. The only sound was the soft tapping of Noah's shoes as he walked beside me toward the exit. But before I reached the door, Melissa called out one last desperate taunt. "Running away again, Aaron? Just like always. You'll be back. You always come crawling back." I paused only long enough to look over my shoulder. "No," I said quietly, but with a resolve I'd never felt before. Not this time. I didn't look back as Noah and I walked out the grand doors of my mother's house. But I could feel the weight of their stares, the burning curiosity about whether I would really leave, whether I would come crawling back like I always had before. Not this time. The summer night was cool and the estate's garden was silent, a stark contrast to the brittle laughter we'd left behind. Noah's small hand squeezed mine tighter. "Mommy, why did Aunt Melissa make a cake like that?" Did I do something wrong? His question cut through me like a knife. "No, sweetheart," I said, gently crouching down to his level. "You did absolutely nothing wrong. Some people just don't know how to be kind." He nodded solemnly, the way a child accepts an explanation he doesn't fully understand but trusts anyway. As I buckled him into the back seat of our old Honda, I caught my reflection in the window, tearful but determined. This wasn't just about today. This was years in the making, a lifetime of subtle insults, backhanded compliments, cold shoulders, and conditional acceptance. Driving home, Noah fell asleep in his car seat, his face soft and peaceful despite what he'd endured that evening. But my mind was racing. Melissa didn't just humiliate my child. She humiliated me, and she did it publicly, surrounded by the very people who should have defended us. I had spent years forgiving her cruelty, years thinking it was just how family is. But tonight had exposed the truth it was never going to change. Not unless I made it change. By the time I reached our apartment, I'd made a decision. It was time to burn every bridge Melissa had carefully built, especially the ones she thought were untouchable. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, scrolling through old emails, text messages, and voicemail recordings. My stomach twisted as I reread Melissa's friendly advice, her patronizing comments about Noah, and even a few offhand confessions she'd made after too much wine. People think I'm so polished she'd bragged in one message, but they have no idea what I really do behind the scenes. That was the thread I pulled. One message led to another. Photos, records, invoices. You see, Melissa wasn't just a mean-spirited socialite who thrived on humiliating her own family. She was also hiding things that could ruin her pristine reputation if they ever saw daylight. And I had the receipts. That evening, as I packed Noah's lunchbox for school, my phone buzzed. It was my cousin Rachel, one of the few family members who had always treated me kindly, though, from a distance. "Hey," she began cautiously. "Are you okay? I heard what happened last night." "Word is spreading fast." "Good," I said simply. There was a pause. "Look, I just thought you should know. Melissa's already spinning the story. She's saying Noah threw a tantrum and you overreacted. People are taking sides, and she's furious." I almost laughed. "Let her be furious." "Thanks for the heads up, Rachel," I said. "But I'm done playing defense. It's time for the truth." Rachel hesitated again. "If you need anything..." "I'll be fine," I said gently. "But thank you, really." When I hung up, my plan was crystal clear. 2 days later, I attended a local charity event, the kind Melissa loved to headline. The kind where she could preen in front of society's elite and pretend to care about causes she barely understood. She was there, of course, in a designer dress, smiling graciously for photographers. But she didn't see me at first. Not until I stepped forward and handed a thick envelope to one of the event organizers, a woman I knew was head of the charities board. "This," I said softly, "might affect who you let represent your organization." Inside that envelope were copies of Melissa's emails, proof she'd siphoned off charity funds to pay for her vacation in Greece disguised as consulting fees. I walked away before anyone could ask questions, before Melissa even realized what was happening. But within hours, she did. Her text arrived just before midnight. "Melissa, what did you do?" I didn't reply. Another message followed. "Melissa, you're making a huge mistake, Aaron. This will hurt you too." She had no leverage, not anymore. And I knew it. The next morning, social media was already buzzing with rumors. Prominent local figure implicated in misuse of charity funds. Her friends were whispering her reputation beginning to crack. Meanwhile, Noah woke up blissfully unaware. "Mommy, can we have pancakes?" he asked sleepily, padding into the kitchen in his dinosaur pajamas. I smiled and kissed the top of his head. "Absolutely, sweetheart. Pancakes and all the syrup you want." By that afternoon, the fallout was complete. Melissa called repeatedly, first demanding, then pleading. She left voicemails dripping with false remorse. "I didn't mean for it to go that far, Aaron. Please, let's talk. You know I love Noah. You know I didn't mean any harm." But I didn't pick up. Not once. My mother tried next. "Sweetheart?" She began, her voice brittle and full of practiced concern. "We can fix this, can't we? Families shouldn't turn on each other over one silly joke." Silly joke. My jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. "No," I said simply before hanging up. That night, as I sat beside Noah while he built a Lego city on the living room carpet, I realized something profound. For the first time in years, I felt free. No longer bound by the twisted loyalty I had carried like an anchor around my neck. The bridges were burning, yes, but on the other side was peace. As I tucked Noah into bed, he wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "Ami, am I a troublemaker, like Aunt Melissa said?" I kissed his forehead and smiled. "No, my love," I whispered. "You're not a troublemaker, you're my hero." And I meant every word. The quiet that settled over our little apartment felt like peace at first, but peace can be deceiving. By the end of the week, the fallout from exposing Melissa's charity fraud had fully exploded. Articles began circulating in the local press. "Socialite under investigation for charity mismanagement." Her name, once synonymous with tasteful galas and enviable Instagram posts, now appeared in headlines she couldn't control. I expected retaliation, but I underestimated just how quickly it would come. Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. Noah was humming to himself at the kitchen table, coloring in a picture of the solar system. I peeked through the peephole, and there she was, Melissa. No sunglasses, no designer dress this time. Just a wrinkled blouse and exhaustion carved into her face. I hesitated for a heartbeat, then opened the door only as far as the chain would allow. "What do you want?" I asked coldly. Her voice cracked when she spoke, almost a whisper. "Aaron, please, I just want to talk." "You talked enough when you humiliated my son." Melissa's eyes brimmed with tears, but I didn't trust them. Her tears were always convenient. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she said. "You've ruined everything. My reputation, my marriage, even my finances. Do you know Travis left me packed up and left without a word this morning? That's not my problem, I said flatly. You did this to yourself. I didn't think you'd actually go this far. We're family. That word again. Family. A word she wielded like a shield when it suited her and a sword when it didn't. You stopped being family the day you used my son as a punchline, I said, my voice low. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a child to protect. I closed the door slowly, firmly. For the first time, she didn't protest. That should have been the end of it. But Melissa wasn't used to losing, and she wasn't going down quietly. By Monday, rumors began swirling online, petty, vicious rumors that I was mentally unstable, that I had exaggerated everything, that I was an unfit mother. Friends started forwarding me screenshots. Melissa's fingerprints were all over them, even if she didn't post them directly. She had her enablers to do that dirty work for her old friends, distant cousins, even a few of her society cronies who hadn't abandoned her yet. She was grasping at straws. But some straws cut deep. Even Rachel called this time, sounding worried. She's trying to turn the narrative, Aaron. Some people are starting to believe her. I smiled grimly into the phone. That's fine, let them. Because what Melissa didn't know was that I wasn't finished either. That evening, as Noah sat cross-legged on the living room floor watching cartoons, I made another call, this one to a friend of mine, Kelly, who worked in PR. Hey, I said, you still looking for a good human interest story? Kelly paused. Depends, what do you have? I told her everything, the humiliations, the dog bone cake, the charity scandal, the bullying. By the time I finished, she was silent for a beat. Then she said, Aaron, this could go national. I felt a flicker of doubt. Did I want that? Did I want my family's dirty laundry aired in public? But then I looked at Noah, and I remembered the look on his face that night at the party, confused, ashamed, unsure if he had done something wrong just for being himself. He deserved the truth to be known. Let's do it, I said firmly. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Kelly's team worked fast. Within days, a major parenting blog picked up the story. They interviewed me carefully, fact-checking everything, and ran a detailed expose about the dark side of performative family culture. The article went viral. By the time it hit national media, Melissa was no longer just a disgraced socialite under local scrutiny. She was a cautionary tale. People from all over left comments and messages of support. Messages poured in from strangers who said they'd endured similar cruelty from their own families. It felt bigger than me, bigger than Melissa. This wasn't just about our family feud anymore. This was about what happens when someone finally draws a line and says no more. But along with the support came something unexpected. An email. From Pravahais. Melissa's husband. I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I even wanted to read what he had to say. But curiosity won out. His message was short but genuine. Aaron, I know you probably hate me too, and I don't blame you, but I just want you to know, I saw that article, I read it twice, and I need you to hear this. You did the right thing. Thank you for finally showing me the truth about who Melissa really is. I should have left years ago. I hope Noah is okay. I wish you both peace. It was strange. For years, I'd thought of Travis as complicit, another silent bystander in a family full of them. But maybe he'd just been trapped too. It didn't matter now. He was gone, and so was the life Melissa had carefully curated for herself. The final straw came 3 days later. My mother called again, but this time her tone was different. Not brittle. Not cold. But small. Aaron, she said softly. I didn't know how bad it had become with Melissa. I almost laughed at that. She didn't know she had sat at that table. She had laughed along. But something inside me had shifted. I didn't feel anger anymore, just distance. Mom, I said gently, you did know. You just didn't want to see it. And now you have to sit with that. She sniffled into the phone, but I didn't offer comfort. Instead, I ended the call politely but firmly. I have to go. Noah needs me. That night, as I tucked Noah into bed, he snuggled closer than usual. Mommy, he whispered, am I still in trouble? I felt my heart crack all over again, not from pain, but from love. No, baby, I said, brushing his hair from his forehead. You've never been in trouble. You're perfect just the way you are. He smiled sleepily and closed his eyes. And for the first time in years, so did I. Life after the storm felt strangely quiet. In the weeks that followed the article going viral, Melissa all but disappeared from public view. The charity formally announced her removal from its board. Several of her sponsors pulled funding from her pet projects. Even her closest friends stopped returning her calls, or so I heard through whispers from distant relatives. But I didn't gloat. Not anymore. The truth was, the noise around Melissa was fading for me too. I didn't need to check gossip blogs or listen to family drama updates from Rachel. I was too busy rebuilding something far more important in my life with Noah. Noah was thriving again. His teachers told me he'd started singing quietly in class, something he'd been too shy to do before. At home, he peppered me with questions about everything. The stars, the oceans, why cats purr. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was living. But just as I thought the chapter was closed, one final unexpected knock came, this time figuratively. A letter. In my mailbox, handwritten and unassuming. It was from my father. The letter was brief but packed with emotion rare for him. Aaron. I've spent the last few weeks thinking about what happened. What's happened for years, really. The truth is, I let Melissa become what she became. And I let myself sit quietly at that table when I should have spoken up for you, and for Noah. I won't ask for forgiveness right away, I don't deserve it. But I would like to see you, and my grandson. Not as the man who laughed along, but as a grandfather who finally understands he has a lot to make right. No pressure, I'll wait until you're ready. I read that letter 3 times before setting it down. It didn't excuse him. It didn't erase the past. But it was the first real accountability I had seen from my father, ever. That night I lay awake thinking about what it meant. Boundaries, forgiveness, healing. Not for Melissa, that bridge was burned, and rightly so. But maybe, just maybe, there was room to heal elsewhere. Like, the next weekend I called him. His voice on the phone was tentative, almost nervous, a tone I'd never heard from him before. Would Noah like to visit the botanical gardens with me? He asked carefully. It was a simple offer. No grand gestures, no promises to fix the past, just an invitation. I asked Noah what he thought. Can I take my new sketchbook? He asked brightly, as if the bitterness that had once surrounded family gatherings had evaporated for him. Yes, sweetheart, I said, kissing the top of his head. You can draw every flower you see. And so we went. It wasn't perfect. At the gardens, my father stumbled through awkward questions. He didn't know Noah's favorite color, or his favorite snack, or even what cartoon he loved most. But he tried. And Noah, true to his sweet nature, gave him a second chance without hesitation. Watching them wander between rows of lilies and hydrangeas, I felt something loosen inside me, not forgiveness exactly, but relief. I was no longer carrying the weight of making it work for everyone. I wasn't performing anymore. Melissa, meanwhile, faded from our lives completely. Occasionally, I'd catch glimpses of her Instagram posts, carefully curated shots from some remote beach or a yoga retreat, hashtags about healing journeys and rising from the ashes. But it didn't matter. She could rebrand herself however she wanted. Her chapter in our lives was closed. And as for my mother, well, she made one last attempt, of course. A stiff phone call full of half apologies and justifications. We all make mistakes, Aaron, she said. But family's family. We need to stick together. I listened quietly. When she was finished, I simply said, family protects each other, you didn't. And then I hung up. Months passed. Noah's confidence blossomed. He joined an art club at school. He even performed in the winter concert. A child who once shrank from attention now sang proudly from the front row, scanning the audience to find me. And I was there. Always there. Present. Alive. Free. One evening, as we folded laundry together, our new little ritual, Noah looked up at me completely serious. Mommy, he said, do you think mean people ever really change? It was such a simple question, and such a hard one. I thought about Melissa, about my mother, even about my father. Sometimes I answered honestly, but sometimes they just pretend to change. That's why we have to protect ourselves, and each other. He nodded thoughtfully. And I'll protect you too, he added, wrapping his little arms around me. It was in that moment I realized something profound. The best revenge isn't scandal or headlines or even cutting people out. The best revenge is healing. The best revenge is peace. And we had it. At last. As I tucked Noah into bed that night, he whispered one more question, one that stopped me cold. Are we okay now, Mom? I knelt down beside him, smoothing his hair away from his face. We're better than okay, I said. We're whole. He smiled, eyes already closing, and drifted into sleep. And this time, so did I. No bitterness. No regret. Just peace. Story 3, I never saw it coming. I got the invitation 2 weeks before Lucas's baby shower. My heart sank when I read the Carter family in the header. I built that apartment with my own savings. I paid every bill on time. I fixed every leaking pipe. I never asked for thanks. I wasn't ready for their surprise. I'm Jade Carter, 29. 5 years ago, I scraped together every cent from side gigs and late shifts. My goal was simple: own a home in the city I love. My friends teased me. They called me Mortgage Maven. I didn't mind. I liked the nickname. It meant I made choices they wouldn't. By month 24, I cleared the last dime of debt. I painted the walls dove gray. I hung plants in the windows. A small balcony looked out on oak trees. My cat Pluto claimed the sunshine corner every afternoon. I woke up each morning proud. This was mine. When my cousin Maya texted the address, she added a wink. You'll love Helen's cake. Helen is my mother, 58 queen of themed desserts. Maya spoke cautiously. She knows our family drama. A week earlier, she'd forwarded me an article about family surprises gone wrong. I laughed it off. I trusted Mother. I should have known better. I pulled into the parking lot and saw plastic balloons arching over twin tables. Pastel ribbons fluttered in the breeze. An upside-down pram sat on one table like it belonged in a gallery. Aunt Sylvia, 54, waved me in. She's Mother's oldest sister and the least wedded to family secrets. I smiled. She looked strained. The cake arrived next. It was an overstuffed monstrosity of fondant. Edible pearls clung to sugar ruffles like oversized earrings. Tiny plastic booties perched on top. It looked less like a celebration and more like a trophy case. Nora Lucas's fiancé stood beside it, her hand on her bump. She beamed. Her joy was real. A sudden ache twisted in my chest. Mother tapped a fork against her glass. The chatter hushed. Marcus, 26, my young cousin, handed her a gilded frame. It felt heavier than it looked. My pulse quickened as Mother held it aloft. From all of us, she declared, voice thick. Everyone clapped. Lucas wiped a tear. Nora's eyes glistened. I forced a small smile. Inside that frame was a deed. My name had vanished. It read, Lucas R. Carter. I blinked twice. My breath caught. I swallowed a laugh, or was it a sob? My hand shook as I stepped forward. Mother's smile nearly cracked her porcelain facade. She said it was their gift to Lucas and the baby. Before I could speak, Father Martin, 60, slid in beside me. He spoke low. You have 30 days to vacate, he said, like reciting a line from a contract. The room held its breath. Everyone stared. I pressed a thumb to my lips and nodded. 30 days. Sure. He believed he held the power. I slipped the frame back into Mother's hand. 1 day is all I need, I whispered. I saw Lucas's brow rise. Nora's jaw went slack. Marcus looked at me wide-eyed. Aunt Sylvia's lips parted as if about to protest. But no one moved. Not even the cousins snapping pictures for Instagram. After the applause faded, I slipped outside. I found Mr. Chen, the building manager, near the rear gate. I handed him an envelope. Quiet entry tomorrow at dawn, I told him. He nodded and slipped it into his pocket. I called Aisha, my lawyer friend, at 11:47 p.m., well past her bedtime. She answered on the first ring. I gave her the story. She said, I'll have paperwork ready by 6. I returned just before midnight. I passed the guests huddled around leftover cake. They laughed about floral arrangements and baby names. My chest went hollow. I realized how blind I'd been. They treated my home like a stage. They admired the curtains, not the builder. At 5 a.m., the building door clicked open. Mr. Chen stood guard at the control panel. He gave me a thumbs up. By 7 a.m., the crew arrived, 2 movers, a locksmith, and a driver. They unloaded carts and boxes. They worked in silence. They took down cabinets, pulled up planks, disconnected the washer and dryer. I watched from across the street as they loaded my life into a truck. I felt no anger. I felt no fear. I felt calm. In the golden light of dawn, I saw every scratch on the floor, every dent I never noticed. It was paid for by me. I climbed into my car with the washer and dryer in the back seat. Pluto mewed, alarmed at the sudden journey. I patted his head. Don't worry, buddy. This is just the beginning. I drove away before anyone noticed. Tomorrow, I'd open the boxes I'd packed. I'd read every document Aisha prepared. I'd meet a new ally, Mrs. Nguyen, the neighbor who took in stray cats. She promised to witness every step. Dawn broke over the city as I sat in my car, the washer and dryer humming softly behind me. I rifled through the manila folder Aisha had delivered late last night. There were eviction notices, title restoration forms, and a draft lawsuit. Each page smelled faintly of printer ink and possibility. My heart pounded not from fear but from anticipation. I had never felt so alive. At exactly 7:15 a.m., I dialed Lucas's number. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I forced my voice steady. Lucas, this is Jade. I've initiated title fraud proceedings. Expect legal papers today. I want to talk face to face. Call me. I hung up before he could interrupt. My pulse slowed. I'd said what needed saying. By 9:00 a.m., the first box sat on Lucas's porch. It was labeled in black ink, Box 1, proof of ownership. Inside lay a framed copy of the original deed, the one with my scrawled some signature. I'd slipped the frame through the mail slot and backed away, the rattling slot echoing like an applause. I imagined Lucas's hand freezing as he read the label. Texts flooded my phone within minutes. Marcus, sis, what did you do, Aunt Sylvia? Are you insane, Mother Jade? Stop this. Father, call me. Only Nora stayed silent. I didn't respond. My strategy was simple, controlled silence. They expected me to panic. I refused. By midday, Aisha appeared at my makeshift office in a corner cafe. She wore her usual blazer and carry-on messenger bag. Your paperwork's airtight, she said, sliding a stack of certified mail receipts across the table. You'll need these when you file at the clerk's office. I nodded, folding her arm over mine in thanks. Her confidence bolstered my own. I spent the next hours scanning receipts and drafting emails. I thought about every late-night shift, every off-duty repair. I remembered how I'd rescued that boiler from bursting on New Year's Eve. I breathed deeply, tasting resolve. They had tried to erase me. Now I would write myself back into history. That afternoon, I met Mrs. Nguyen in the lobby of my former building. She's 62, widowed, and a cat rescuer with bright scarves and kind eyes. She held 2 cups of jasmine tea. You did the right thing, she said gently. I accepted the tea and let her warmth seep in. Thank you, I whispered. Her presence reminded me I wasn't alone. Across the hall, neighbors whispered as I carried legal paperwork to the management office. I raised my head, smiling politely. I imagined their surprise when they discovered my claim. They'd admired my artful shelving and tidy balcony. Soon they'd realize those blossoms had roots in my sweat, not someone else's gift. Back at the cafe, I opened my laptop to the spreadsheet I'd built. It listed every transaction, down payment, monthly dues, plumbing repairs, new lighting. I color-coded columns: paid by Jade, paid by Carter family, outstanding balance. The total glowed in red. The family owed me over $200,000 in labor and lost equity. My fingers hovered over the send button. I thought of my childhood reading under that same balcony tree, tracing constellations in the sky with my father. Betrayal cut deep, but it also lit a fire. I would not let nostalgia trap me in silence. I tapped send and watched the email fly to Lucas' mother and father. That evening, I gathered my courage and stepped into the co-working space where I'd booked a private meeting room. I invited 2 allies, Aisha and my friend Ezra, a forensic accountant. Ezra spread out bank statements and credit card bills. Look at these interest charges, he said, circling lines in red pen. They enrich them at your expense. We leaned in, plotting next moves. Late night, I drafted a letter to extended family. I wrote plainly, I know some of you heard only one side. Here are the facts. I attached the spreadsheet and copies of the deed. I hit reply all and closed my laptop. A hollow silence followed, broken only by my breathing. Before dawn, I received my first legal response. Lucas's attorney demanded I withdraw my claims or face defamation charges. His email was polite but threatening. I screenshot it and forwarded it to Aisha. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji. They're bluffing. I smiled, a glint of triumph in my chest. I slept fitfully. Dreams of shattered frames and empty rooms drifted through my mind. When morning came, I felt steady. I opened my journal and wrote, I stand for myself. I will rebuild. Part 3 begins with Lucas knocking at my door and ends with him seeing my next move. For now, I sit with Pluto on my new balcony, the city humming below. I breathe the promise of tomorrow and sip my jasmine tea. This story is far from over. Lucas knocked at my door at exactly 10:23 a.m. I froze, heart hammering, then slid the deadbolt open. He stood there in his worn blue hoodie eyes, rimmed red from too many restless nights. Jade, he said quietly, voice small and raw, we need to talk. I stepped aside and motioned him in. Pluto, my gray tabby, brushed past Lucas's legs and wound around his ankles. He gave a half smile at the cat. Pluto purred with approval. The living room was spare, a single dove-gray sofa, a reading lamp, and a low coffee table. On the table sat a neat stack of documents tied with red ribbon. Lucas's gaze flicked from Pluto to that ribbon. This another stunt, he asked, voice cracking. Your email? The lawsuit? I reached over and untied the ribbon. Open it, I said softly. He peeled back the paper and found invoice after invoice, plumbing repairs, new lighting fixtures, tax statements, insurance premiums, every dollar I'd poured into that apartment. His hand trembled as he flipped pages. You did all this, he whispered. I nodded. Every bolt, every repair, every late fee. He looked up, guilt and shame flickering across his face. I didn't know. I closed my laptop beside us. You took my home. His voice dropped to a whisper. We thought we were honoring you. By stealing my name off the deed, I snapped. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. The silence stretched until I spoke again. What now, he asked, voice small. I stood and moved toward the balcony. Come see. He followed. A row of 8 uniform boxes lined the railing, each labeled in crisp black letters, repairs, taxes. Legal personal costs, lost equity, shared expenses, family fund, Pluto's care. Lucas's breath caught. What is all that? I gestured. Your responsibility. I've documented everything. I want you to read it, then decide how to make this right. He stepped closer, hand hovering over the repairs box. Papers rustled inside. His brow furrowed. I don't know how. I crouched next to him. Here's how: open 1 box per day. Read it. Write your response. We'll meet and negotiate. He let out a bitter laugh. Negotiate. I shrugged. Yes, you propose. I decide if it's enough. He closed his eyes, then nodded. Okay? I straightened. One more thing. He looked up wary. My phone buzzed. I read the message, June 12th, 9 a.m., public title restoration hearing. I held up the screen. A formal hearing. Notice runs in tomorrow's paper. He paled. A hearing. I nodded. You'll testify under oath. He dropped the nearest box. Papers fluttered like startled birds. He stared at me. You're serious. More serious than any birthday gift, I replied. He took a shuddering breath. I'll do it. I smiled, a steady warmth in my chest. Tomorrow, box 1, repairs and taxes. He looked at the stack again, then at me. This your next move? I nodded, yes. He swallowed and turned to leave. At the threshold, he paused. I held out a small card on the coffee table, June 12th, 6 p.m. Family reconciliation, picnic, Riverview Park. He glanced at it, then back at me. His voice barely audible, a picnic. I offered him a calm smile. Everyone's invited. He took a step back, then closed the door quietly. I watched the handle fall. Then I turned to the boxes, my proof, my future, my power reclaimed. Tomorrow, Lucas will see box 1. And after that, well, they'll all see what I'm capable of. I woke before dawn, the sky still ink dark. Today was the picnic at Riverview Park, and the culmination of everything I'd fought for. I packed coolers with iced tea and lemonade, double-checked my basket of printed packets, and traced the ribbon around my journal. Pluto wound around my calves as I slipped out his purr, a steady drum in the cool air. Riverview Park lay a mile away, its rolling lawn sloping down to the river. I arrived at noon and laid out 8 blankets in a loose circle. Each blanket had a wicker basket at its center labeled with one word: repairs. Taxes, equity, family, buds, care, truth, dignity. Inside each lay documents, invoices, notices, spreadsheets, and personal letters, every proof of what I'd built and what they'd taken. By 3 p.m., Lucas arrived in a rented blazer, face drawn and eyes wary. He carried the first basket marked repairs. We sat side by side on the third blanket. He lifted the lid and found every plumbing bill, every spare parts receipt, every hour I'd spent fixing leaky pipes. His hands shook as he thumbed through the pages. I never saw he whispered. You should have asked, I said softly. He met my gaze, shame and relief tangled in his eyes. I'm sorry. I nodded, my chest aching. Thank you. Aunt Sylvia came next. She knelt and hugged me before looking at the family packet. She wept, clutching the folder to her chest. Mother hovered at the edge of the blankets, clutching a plate of fruit. She placed it beside me and sank down, folding me into a trembling embrace. I was wrong, she said. I'm so sorry. I held her, feeling her tears warm my shoulder. I let her apology in. Father arrived last, carrying 2 folding chairs and a stack of court papers. He sat handing me the documents, the judge's order restoring title, and my name dated June 12th. He read in silence, then looked up. His eyes were clear. I understand now, he said. When everyone had gathered, I stood in the center of our circle. I unfolded a sheet of paper titled Picnic Program and read, 1. Acknowledgement, 2. Apology, 3. Action, 4. Gila. I paused, letting the words settle. Thank you for coming, I began. My voice wavered but held. This picnic is proof that we can rebuild. I refuse to be silenced. I refuse to be erased. Today I ask you to stand with me not as recipients of charity, but as participants in restoration. I pointed to the baskets. Open them, read them, reflect, then share how you'll make it right. For the next hour, we moved blanket to blanket. Lucas proposed painting my balcony together. Mother offered to manage my budget spreadsheets. Aunt Sylvia volunteered to host our family holiday. Father promised to handle tax filings. Each pledge felt like a brick laid in a new foundation. At sunset, we stood in a circle, hands joined. The river glinted behind us. I closed my eyes and breathed in the moment. I felt family flawed but present, restoring piece by piece. That night, I hung the watercolor Lucas painted of Riverview Park above the sofa. It captured our picnic blankets, baskets, and the river's curve. I ran my fingers over the frame and smiled. In the morning, I walked through my apartment. I inspected the dove-gray walls, the oak floors I'd refinished after the movers tore them up, and the reading corner I'd built solo. It felt different now, warmer, richer with shared history. A few weeks later, the final box arrived at Lucas's door. It contained a simple note. Thank you, Jay. No invoices this time, just gratitude. I texted Lucas congratulations. He replied to us. I closed the door, Pluto in my arms, and settled on the balcony. The city hummed below. The breeze carried echoes of our laughter from the picnic. I leaned back, eyes closed, and let silence wash over me. By silence now meant peace.